Stop replaying what went wrong like you could have controlled it. You've been carrying guilt for outcomes that were never yours to determine, blaming yourself for losses that were actually divine interventions. You think if you just done more, said more, been more, things would have turned out differently. But what if I told you that the relationship that ended, the opportunity that fell through, the door that closed, wasn't because you failed? What if God allowed it because staying would have destroyed you? What if your so-called failure was actually His rescue? I see you. I've watched you dissect every conversation, every decision, trying to find the moment you ruined it. I saw you apologize for things that weren't your fault, take responsibility for people's choices that were never yours to control. I was there when you stayed up at night thinking, if only I'd been better, smarter, stronger, maybe they would have stayed. But you're not the reason it ended. You're the reason you survived it. And God didn't let it fall apart to punish you. He let it fall apart to protect you. Type amen if you've been blaming yourself for what God allowed.
There's a man in the Bible named Joseph. He had a dream. God showed him a future where he'd be great, where people would bow to him, where he'd lead. But Joseph made a mistake. He told his brothers about the dream, and they hated him for it. They threw him into a pit, sold him into slavery, and told their father he was dead. Joseph lost everything: his family, his home, his freedom. And for years, Joseph could have blamed himself. If only I'd kept my mouth shut. If only I'd been more careful. If only I hadn't shared the dream. But Joseph didn't know something crucial. God allowed the pit because the pit was the only path to the palace. Joseph was sold to Potiphar, an Egyptian official. He worked hard, earned trust, and was promoted to run the entire household. Things were looking up. But then Potiphar's wife falsely accused Joseph of assault, and he was thrown into prison, innocent but imprisoned, faithful but forgotten. And again, Joseph could have blamed himself. Maybe I shouldn't have trusted anyone. Maybe I should have stayed invisible. But what Joseph didn't know yet was that every loss was positioning him for something greater. The pit led to Potiphar's house. Potiphar's house led to prison, and prison led to Pharaoh. But here's what you didn't know. Joseph didn't just survive these losses. He learned from them. In the pit, he learned resilience. In Potiphar's house, he learned administration. In prison, he learned discernment.
Every place that felt like a setback was actually a set-up. Every environment that looked like punishment was actually preparation. And when Pharaoh had a dream that no one could interpret, someone remembered Joseph. He was pulled from prison, brought before the king, and in one day went from prisoner to prime minister, not because he manipulated his way there, but because God orchestrated every loss to position him for the promotion. This is where most people miss it. They think loss means failure. They think closed doors mean they did something wrong. But Joseph's story proves that sometimes God closes doors not because you're unqualified, but because you're overqualified for that season. Sometimes He removes people not because you're unworthy, but because they're unworthy of your future. Sometimes He allows the pit because the palace requires preparation you can only get in the dark. Comment 777 if you're ready to stop blaming yourself and start trusting the process. So let me ask you, what loss are you still carrying guilt for? What ended that you keep thinking you could have saved? Joseph didn't cause his brother's jealousy. He didn't provoke Potiphar's wife's lies. He didn't deserve prison.
But he also didn't waste time blaming himself. He kept showing up. He kept trusting. And God used every single loss to build something Joseph could never have imagined. Your loss wasn't wasted. It was necessary. And the sooner you stop blaming yourself, the sooner you'll see what God was actually doing. Within the next 40 days, you're going to get clarity on something you've been blaming yourself for. A conversation will happen, a revelation will come, or a door will open that will make you realize God was protecting you, not punishing you. That job you didn't get, it was toxic, and you would have burned out. That relationship that ended ended. It was draining you, and staying would have destroyed you. That opportunity that fell through, it wasn't aligned, and pursuing it would have delayed your real calling. God wasn't withholding, He was redirecting. And in 40 days, you'll finally understand why. Here's your action. In the next 10 days, write a letter to yourself titled, "What I Thought Was Loss." List 3 things that ended: relationships, jobs, opportunities that you've been carrying guilt about. Then, next to each one, write this: God allowed this to protect me, not punish me.
Read it every morning for 40 days, because the more you speak truth over the loss, the less power the guilt has. Joseph didn't know why the pit happened when it happened, but years later, when he stood before his brothers as the second most powerful man in Egypt, he said, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." The loss made sense, and yours will too. Joseph's brothers came to Egypt begging for food during a famine. They didn't recognize him, but Joseph recognized them, and he could have taken revenge. He could have punished them for the pit, for the slavery, for the years of pain, but he didn't, because Joseph understood something powerful. The pit wasn't about them, it was about him. God allowed their betrayal to position him to save nations. And if Joseph had stayed in his father's house, comfortable and safe, he never would have been ready for the responsibility he was called to carry. Type amen to activate this word over your life. You think staying in that relationship would have been the blessing, but it wouldn't have. You think getting that job would have been the breakthrough, but it wouldn't have. You think holding on to what ended would have brought peace, but it wouldn't have.
Because sometimes God's greatest mercy is what He doesn't give you. Sometimes His deepest love is what He removes before it destroys you. And every loss you're carrying guilt for, it was His hand pulling you out of something that would have pulled you under. Stop blaming yourself for what God allowed. Stop carrying guilt for outcomes He orchestrated. Stop thinking you failed when you were actually being rescued. Joseph went from pit to prime minister, but he had to go through Potiphar's house and prison to get there. And every environment that felt like a dead end was actually a stepping stone. The pit wasn't punishment, it was preparation. The prison wasn't failure, it was refinement. And the pain you're carrying isn't proof you messed up, it's proof you survived something that could have destroyed you. The next 40 days will shift your perspective. You'll see the losses differently. You'll understand the closed doors. You'll realize that what you thought was failure was actually God's faithfulness, protecting you from something you couldn't see. Joseph didn't cause the pit, but he did choose how he showed up in it. He could have stayed bitter, blamed himself, given up, but he didn't. He served faithfully in every environment God placed him, even the painful ones. And because of that, when the promotion came, he was ready. Your promotion is coming too. But first, you have to stop blaming yourself for the pit. Stop carrying guilt for the losses. Stop thinking you failed when God was actually repositioning you. Joseph's story didn't end in the pit. It ended in the palace. And yours won't end in the pain either. It will end in purpose, but only if you release the guilt and trust that every loss was leading you somewhere greater. Stop blaming yourself. Start trusting Him. The pit wasn't your punishment. It was your preparation. And the palace is closer than you think.